What's up guys, Tamarakshan here. When it comes to smartphones, a segment that's having a very stiff competition is the 20,000 Indian rupees range. Because that's the usual sweet spot many will be aiming for when it comes to smartphones. And here, since this is not a very budget oriented pricing area, well, the phone we want to get in this price range must perform really well in the most needed 5 factors, which are these. And the Redmi Note 10 Pro Max is actually a phone which has got plenty of hype. But keeping the initial marketing hype aside, well, how's the Note 10 Pro Max holding up based on a long-term real-world usage perspective? Well, this video is all about that. Now here, before checking the core factors, let's first pull up the price chart of the Note 10 Pro Max. And here, as you can see, the starting price is 18,999 Indian rupees. But for that price, the storage we get is just 64 GB. So the better one is surely the second variant, which has 6 GB RAM and 128 GB storage. But then its pricing is 19,999 Indian rupees. And there is also the top variant, which has a couple of extra GB RAM, but then its pricing does go up. So here the recommended variant is surely the second variant, and that's the one we were testing. So now that we have an idea about the pricing, let's now move our focus to the factors, and in that, let's start things with the first factor, which is the design and the build quality. And in this factor, the Note 10 Pro Max is still an excellent phone. And that's mainly because of the design and also the way Redmi has given every needed feature in this design. Now as you can see, the design does look premium and also it has held up pretty well. The frame is plastic, which is somewhat an expected thing from phones in this segment. But then Redmi did use glass on the back, which is a neat thing. Now glass has its drawbacks with durability if you drop the phone, but the best part of a glass back phone is the feel. It does give a more premium in-hand feel, and here Redmi also did opt for a matte texture with this back glass. Now this matte texture will depend on the color you're gonna get, and I feel the best looking color of the Note 10 Pro Max is surely this glacial blue one, and this color does get a matte texture. Now over this course of time, there isn't any visible scratches on the back glass, but the frame being glossy does attract scratches and smudges. But then this eye-catching camera module area is still looking pretty much pristine, so overall from all that regard, the build quality is good. There isn't any flexing or gap formation, and here all the buttons, they still do provide great tactile feedback, and here this power button does house the fingerprint scanner, which does work with good speed and great accuracy. Then also about the front glass, it's Gorilla Glass 5 and it's also holding up well, but like always, I do recommend to use a tempered glass protector, and here about the ports available, well, you get a headphone jack and also a USB-C charging slot. So from a features offered point of view, well, Redmi hasn't skipped anything, and here they even did offer a IR blaster, which to be frank is a neat offering. Now more than all this, I'm more impressed that they did make the phone a splash and dust resistant one with the IP53 rating. It's something we usually don't see with phones in this price range, and this rating, even though being a very basic one, it's an assurance that accidental spills or splashes won't do much damage. And also another area where phones in this segment shows the price cut is with the haptic feedback. It's basically because companies usually tend to use an average quality vibration system, but here Redmi must have used a good one because the haptic feedback from this phone is good. Then another thing to point out is that the internal storage can be expanded because the phone doesn't use a hybrid SIM tray. And here all these are offered in a phone that's just 8.1 mm thick, and also the weight isn't that much too. Now this phone is a big one in terms of height and width, but here the back glass does curve well to provide a great ergonomic feel. But here a key thing to note is that the phone is a bit slippery, and it can be because of the matte textured back. So the safe option is to use a case, and the good part is that the phone does come with a transparent case in box. So overall in the design and build quality factor, well, the Redmi Note 10 Pro Max is a great one in the segment. There isn't much to complain other than maybe this silver ring around the hole punch camera, but that's basically a display side issue, so with this factor, I'm even now impressed. And hence let's move to the second factor, which is the display and audio. Well, this is also another area where things are still positive. In this price bracket, the Note 10 Pro Max's display and audio output is great. Now the display used is a 6.67-inch Full HD Plus Super AMOLED panel, and this display does support HDR10. But here these are stuff that's usually now available in majority of the phones in this budget, and hence there must be a standout feature, and this phone actually has such a feature, and it's the 120Hz refresh rate support. This does make the scrolls and swipes very smooth, and hence this feature is a great one. But then what we should always look for is the quality of the panel used, and I'm happy to report that this panel is a good one in terms of quality. There isn't any tinting or rainbow effect, and also the colors, they look sharp, and even the viewing angles is not bad. Now about the peak brightness, well, there is a weird marketing thing happening which you shouldn't fall for, because your Redmi actually claims that the peak brightness level is 1200 nits, but that's only when you're watching HDR content. and in reality, you probably won't be watching much HDR content, and in such a scenario with standard contents, the peak brightness level this display can reach is 450 nits. Well, this brightness level is sufficient enough for using the phone outdoors, but then the claims from the manufacturer is actually a bit misleading. But still, from a display's experience point of view, well, even now there isn't any issues, and I totally enjoyed consuming content from this display because of the slimmer bezels. Now the silver ring, it's a hindrance only when you focus on that, but still it was something that could have been avoided. Now here the main reason I enjoyed watching content is not only because of the good quality display, but it's also because of the great speaker system used here. The phone does have dual stereo speakers and the output from it is very loud, and also there is richness to the audio. Now the bass is a bit on the lower side, but still the overall output does cover up for that, and here the top speaker setup is an interesting one because this grill as well as the earpiece does output audio along with the bottom grill. And also if you have a wired headphone with you, well, you can connect that and enjoy audio in that way too. Then about calls, well, the experience is good because firstly the earpiece does output clear sound, and also the mics, they do pick up sound in a neat manner too. So from all this, well, this factor is also a very strong one for the Redmi Note 10 Pro Max. And it's like in this budget, the Note 10 Pro Max does shine well with the first two factors. But still there are three more major things to check, and hence let's move on to the third one, which is a very important one, especially from a long-term usage perspective, and it's the performance and user experience. Now the first thing to check in this factor is the internals, and here the processor used is the Snapdragon 732G along with 6GB or 8GB LPDDR4 RAM, and about the internal storage, it's 120GB UFS 2.2 storage. Well, these specs are good for a phone that's priced in the 20,000 Indian rupees range, and here this processor, well, frankly, it's sufficiently powerful. Daily tasks all work fine, especially the usual social media apps. Well, they open quickly and also they run smoothly, and even while doing intense tasks, this processor can handle things pretty well, and if it's a heavy graphic intense game, well, the Adreno 618 GPU does offer a neat graphic experience. There isn't much lag while gaming, and even frame drops isn't easily noticeable, and also the phones doesn't get very hot with extended use. You will notice bit of heating, but that's kind of a common thing with phones, and it's not something that you should worry about. But that said, everything is not perfect, and over this course of time, I've started to notice issues and lags here and there, and these issues are basically software related. MIUI is not my preferred skin of choice, and I think MIUI 12 version based on Android 11 is a bit resource heavy, and hence the RAM management was very aggressive. Only 3 to 4 apps stay open in memory, and that too, it only happens for 15 minutes or so, and it's with the 6GB RAM variant. Then at times, I was also seeing ads in the lock screen, which is not an acceptable thing, and about updates, they're delayed, and I really doubt how well this phone will be supported in future. These are concerning things, and actually all this concern is basically from the software side. Now if this was a stock Android phone, maybe things would have been great, but unfortunately it's not, and here as of now I'll rate the performance as good, but the user experience as kinda average. Well, here an interesting topic with this phone that I've seen in the internet is the lack of 5G support, but to be frank, I don't think it's a very concerning issue. Lack of 5G as of now is not at all a concern, and maybe it will change in the long run, like after 1.5 or 2 years, but then also most of the phones that have support for 5G right now doesn't support plenty of 5G bands, and it's usually 1 or 2 bands. So I feel right now 5G is just a marketing gimmick, and hence the lack of 5G support in the Note 10 Pro Max is not a major thing. But then with the software, I have concerns with that, especially while we focus things on a 1 year from now basis. Well, that's all about the third factor, and now let's move on to the fourth factor, which is one of the most hyped factor with this phone, and that's the cameras. The Redmi Note 10 Pro Max has 4 cameras on the back, in which the main sensor is a 108 megapixel Samsung HM2 sensor, and then you get a 8 megapixel ultra wide angle camera which has 118 degree field of view, and the third camera is a 5 megapixel super macro one which has 2x telephoto capability, and the last one, which is the unwanted one, is a 2 megapixel depth sensor. Well, here for the price, the main camera is a good one for taking photos. Other than that, the only strong point is from the macro camera, which actually takes exceptional macro photos again for this price. Now the photos from this main camera are sharp and also saturated, so the colors does pop out, but here the dynamic range is not the best. But overall, if it's a well lit condition, then the photos are good and it does stand well with the competition. But as the light fades, things take a sharp turn in terms of detail because in such conditions, photos tend to become soft. There is night mode support, so even in pitch dark, you can capture usable photos, and overall the main camera, as I said earlier, is a good one for photos. But then about the ultra wide angle camera, it's just fine. If you need to capture a very wide frame and there is great lighting available, well then you can use this camera, else it's better to stick on to the main sensor. But here what has surprised me is the super macro camera. The shots from the super macro camera are pretty great. Macro shots look sufficiently sharp, and also there wasn't a focus hunting issue. So that's with photos, and when it comes to videos, it's a disappointment. Well, 4K video recording at 30 FPS is supported along with 1080p at 60 FPS, which all looks good in paper, but in reality if you opt any setting above 1080p at 30 FPS, well then the videos lose stabilization and also focus shifting does take time. Now the overall scene does maintain the sharpness and also colors look vibrant, but then the main core issue does make the videos very average. And here I won't prefer this phone for recording videos. And the same is applicable if you are a selfie centric person. This selfie camera is also an average one. It's a 16 megapixel f2.45 aperture camera, but here the output is very processed. Indoor shots has noise and also the subject has more shadowing, and with outdoor shots, well, the skin smoothing is very evident. And hence overall I'm not a fan of the selfie camera for taking photos. But with videos, even though it's not very good, it's better than the selfies captured if the scenario has proper lighting. So overall about the camera system, it's not living up to the hype, and what I'll rate is just fine for the pricing. The good part we get is with photo capturing from the main and the super macro camera, and other than that, there isn't anything special. And that takes us to the last factor, which is the battery. The battery capacity of the Note 10 Pro Max is 5020 mAh, which is a good size, but here the battery backup, it totally depends on the way we use the phone. If it's like an extreme settings usage where 120Hz is turned on and also the brightness level is always kept in the 50% range, well then the screen time you'll get with moderately heavy usage is approximately in the 5.5 hour range. It's a good screen on time, and here with such a usage, the battery will last for a day. But then in this segment, there are phones with 7000 mAh battery, so that makes things a bit tough with a comparison. But that said, the phone does come with a 33 watt fast charger, and to top the battery from 0%, with this charger and the included cable, well the time needed is approximately 1 hour 18 minutes. So here this fast charging thing is kinda like a back support, and hence even though there isn't wireless charging support, I'll rate the battery factor of the Note 10 Pro Max as good. Then some of the final things to note is that the Bluetooth version of the phone is 5.1 and the Wi-Fi version is dual band Wi-Fi, and also all the needed sensors are present, but you do miss out NFC. Well, I guess that's everything about the Note 10 Pro Max after 3 months of launch. And here after checking everything, well even now the Note 10 Pro Max is a great option, but this phone actually has a tough competition from its same lineup. And I'm talking about the Note 10 Pro. It's almost the same phone with the difference happening in the camera department, but then the pricing of the Note 10 Pro is less than the Note 10 Pro Max, and hence that's the phone I personally prefer over this one. Because this 108 megapixel camera is a good one for photos, and that's the only extra you're getting, and if that's a great priority for you, well then the Note 10 Pro Max is better than the Note 10 Pro, and here with both these phones, the best things are with the design, its build quality, the features offered, then the display is a great one for media consumption, and that's actually backed well by the stereo speakers, and here the performance is also good, and even the battery side is well covered. The drawbacks of this phone is basically with the software experience, and also the camera does fall short in most of the things, with an exception happening just with the main camera and the macro sensor, and that too just for photos. So if these issues are not a concern, you will enjoy the experience from the Note 10 Pro Max and even the Note 10 Pro. That's all for this video guys. Hope you enjoyed it. If so, a like will be great, and also please don't forget to subscribe because we'll be regularly uploading more interesting videos, and your subscription does help the channel a lot. See you again in the next one. Till then, bye.